He was the lead actor of a film that is currently breaking box office records worldwide. A man seen almost as America's golden boy, like a national treasure, an incredibly funny guy. His new movie, The Mask, will probably generate such massive revenue that it will overshadow almost every other project in Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Carrey. Even at a very young age, Jim Carrey loved spending hours in front of the mirror, trying to improve his facial expressions. At the age of 15, he performed his first stand-up show in his hometown in Canada. At 19, he moved to Los Angeles to try his luck. There, he began performing in various clubs and taking small roles in films. This allowed him to earn enough money to support his family. Audiences absolutely loved his on-screen performance and aura. Jim could turn even the most ordinary interviews into a live show. Thanks to his extraordinary facial expressions and body language, he could instantly transform into any character he wanted. Jim Carrey had complete belief in his success. During the lonely evenings he spent in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles, he would always dream of that big breakthrough. He even wrote himself a check for $10 million and gave himself 5 years to earn that amount. Interestingly, he earned that money much earlier than his target, and that was only the beginning of his long journey. However, there was another side of Jim that he kept hidden from everyone. A side buried behind the jokes, the exaggerated expressions, and the worldwide fame. This side of Jim didn't really match the cheerful comedian image we all knew, because deep down, Carrey was actually filled with personal pain and drama. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Carrey. How are you tonight? Good. 1994 became the turning point of Jim Carrey's career. He was already a recognized and promising young comedian, but within just 1 year, he starred in 3 major hit films back-to-back. The first of these was Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. At first, Jim Carrey found the script quite weak, and he only accepted the role on one condition, that he could rewrite the script the way he wanted. Carrey decided to model the character after a parrot. Colorful tropical shirts, a unique way of speaking, and sharp head movements all came from this idea. His constant improvisation on set often caused his co-stars to burst into laughter and forced filming to stop. At the same time, both Jim and director Tom Shadyac knew that this unusual, never-before-seen style of comedy would either create a huge sensation or completely ruin their careers. Director Shadyac described those days like this: "No one really knew what we had. Jimmy and I were just laughing a lot. We chose a style that felt like a cartoon character brought to life, and it was incredibly fun." Although critics at the time didn't appreciate this new style of comedy, the film became a massive success among audiences. Its box office revenue was 6 times its budget. This meant that the detective was no longer just a film character. It symbolized the birth of a new style in physical comedy: energetic, fearless, and completely unpredictable. Carrey moved as if he had no bones, no limits, no hesitation. Shortly after, another legendary film we all know, The Mask, premiered. This comedy was actually based on a dark comic book series. Because Jim had loved cartoons since childhood, he fell in love with the story and did everything he could to bring the mask to life on the big screen. He spent 4 hours every day in the makeup chair. Interestingly, you might remember that while playing the mask, Jim Carrey wore extremely large fake teeth. Normally, he was only supposed to wear them in scenes where he didn't speak. However, Carrey learned to speak clearly even with those massive teeth, and the entire film was shot that way. Once again, his improvisations, going beyond the script, became an essential part of the film.
What Jim was able to physically achieve in front of the camera was far more impressive than the visual effects I had originally planned to add later. That's why I cancelled many of those effects.
After earning $350,000 from The Mask, Carrey was initially about to agree to a deal of $700,000 for Dumb and Dumber. However, thanks to the massive success he had achieved and the director's complete trust in him, the terms were renegotiated and his fee was increased to a full $7 million. As you all know, the film became incredibly popular, and Jim Carrey officially became one of Hollywood's most influential and highest-paid stars.
I think he is not only one of the funniest people in the world, but also a very creative writer. While other actors are simply given material to work with, no matter what you give Jim, he manages to take that material, the script, and turn it into something much better every single time.
The massive popularity Jim achieved, of course, caught the attention of Hollywood film studios as well. They began re-releasing his older, lesser-known works as if they were new. They even marketed old films in which Jim only had small roles as if he were the lead, just to attract audiences using his name. For example, a comedy film originally titled Introducing Janet was re-released under the name Rubberface, simply to take advantage of Jim Carrey's famous facial expressions and draw in viewers. In 1995, Jim played the Riddler in Batman Forever. He refused to use a stunt double during filming and performed even the explosion scenes himself. This was because stunt doubles couldn't replicate his unique expressions on camera. To ensure everything was perfect, the actor personally coordinated every detail with the team responsible for the film's explosion scenes. Those who worked with him said this about Jim.
I've never seen anyone like him. He plays his role as if he feels it in every cell of his body. He's truly an extraordinary young man. One of the most determined and professional people I've ever seen. Now, he prepares for his scenes by staying up all night, practicing his facial expressions in front of the mirror.
After playing extraordinary and unconventional characters, Jim surprised his fans this time by portraying an ordinary family man in Liar Liar. On set, he worked relentlessly in every scene. For example, in that famous bathroom scene where he fights himself, the actor actually hit himself. The sounds that came out were so clear and natural that they were kept in the final version of the film without the need for any additional sound effects. By the 2000s, Carrey's success had multiplied. He made history as the first actor to earn $20 million for a single film. The $25 million he earned from How the Grinch Stole Christmas became his personal record, and once again proved that he was one of the most expensive stars in Hollywood. His colleagues described the atmosphere he created on set like this. Every morning, he walks in and spreads the joy of being there to everyone around him. It gives off an incredible energy. We all come alive with his energy. Everyone feels much more free. Jim Carrey's movie Yes Man became a true source of inspiration for many viewers and people in the film industry. For the role, he learned Korean, mastered the guitar, and learned how to ride a motorcycle. He even performed the high jump scene himself without a stunt double. However, his most serious injury in the film actually happened during something that seemed very simple. In a bar scene, he fell so hard that he broke 3 ribs at once. Jim summarized his philosophy of life at that time with these words.
Business of freeing people from concern. I call it the Church of FFC, freedom from concern, and that's been my ministry my whole life.
After a while, hopefully it'll be to the point where I can't walk out in the street. Won't that be fun? where it'll be impossible to walk anywhere without being recognized.
Jim had realized he was very talented at a very early age, and in fact, he achieved his dreams early on as well. But behind these dazzling successes lay a difficult and painful childhood that he didn't even want to look back on. He was the youngest of 4 children. His father had given up his dreams of becoming a musician and started working as an accountant to support the family. His mother, Catherine, was a former artist. Jim grew up as an introverted child, spending most of his time alone, drawing, writing poetry, and making funny faces in front of the mirror.
You have such an incredible talent for physical comedy. Where did that come from?
Desperation.
Desperation?
I had a sick mom, man. I wanted to make her feel better.
When Jim was just 14 years old, his father lost his job. This marked the beginning of a dark and deep period of poverty for the family. Because they lost their home, the entire family had to live in a van.
After 35 years, he loses a job as the accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
Oh, gosh. It became clear to me that there is no safe living. There's no safe job.
To survive, the entire family started working at a tire factory. Jim, too, had to clean toilets at just 10 years old.
I spent, 8 hours after school scraping pubic hairs off the urinals.
And it made me mad.
It was not a happy time. I became angry.
In the end, he had to drop out of school completely. Comedy helped Jim express the anger inside him in a peaceful way. By impersonating others and creating parodies, he was actually hiding his true self. He struggled a lot to perform stand-up, But alongside his successes, there were many failures. There were times when he was booed off stage and had the microphone taken from him. One of the most famous comedy shows of that time, Saturday Night Live, rejected Jim Carrey 3 times.
The risk being seen is the toughest thing in the world. We're all very shy people, people who do comedy. We're shy, and the emotion is right there on the surface. If you pricked me with a pin, I would fly around the room. That's the risk, is that you are showing them yourself, your true, authentic self, and the chances of being rejected are much more important, much more terrifying.
Jim's mother passed away in 1991 before she could see her son's great success. His father died in 1994, just 3 weeks after the premiere of The Mask. At his father's funeral, Carrey placed that famous $10 million check, the one he had once written to himself, inside his father's coffin.
I also understand that you put that check that you'd written to yourself in the casket with your father when he passed. Is that true?
Yeah, because it really was his dream, too.
Because it was kind of our dream, together.
When Jim became one of Hollywood's richest stars, he didn't take long to feel the weight of that fame. Paparazzi who never left him alone, fans and newspapers spreading false rumors about his private life, were constantly after him. During this difficult period, he received a phone call from Peter Weir, the director of Dead Poets Society. Weir had seen his performance in Ace Ventura and was very impressed. Jim's role in The Truman Show perfectly reflected his real-life experiences. He felt like his every move was being watched and his privacy had completely disappeared. Working on The Truman Show was quite challenging for Jim. He often had disagreements with the director. The biggest challenge was that Jim had to show completely genuine and sincere emotions. This level of vulnerability frightened him because until then, he had always been used to hiding behind comedic characters and masks. However, with this film, Jim Carrey proved to the world that he could not only play comedic roles, but also deeply emotional and dramatic ones. After that, he decided to further develop his acting skills in serious roles, and perhaps he immersed himself in it a bit too much. His next project was more than just a film for him, Man on the Moon, where he would portray the legendary comedian Andy Kaufman. Jim would bring his childhood hero to life. For this role, Jim Carrey immersed himself so deeply that both on and off set, he refused to be called Jim Carrey anymore. When the family of Andy Kaufman, who had passed away 15 years earlier, visited the set, Jim treated them as if they were his own family. Seeing someone in front of them who resembled their lost loved one turned into something like a small therapy session for them. Jim's behavior on set sometimes pushed boundaries and even astonished those around him. Because for Andy Kaufman, life itself was a never-ending performance. He would constantly provoke people with his strange behavior and test their limits. Carrey didn't just imitate Andy, he decided to fully become him. That's why capturing Andy Kaufman's famous, provocative, and chaos-loving personality was extremely important to him. The tense moments on set proved exactly that.
Too late! Too late!
Is exactly the way Andy was.
It's totally surreal.
The film's director, Milos Forman, had a very difficult time because Jim's behavior disrupted the entire filming process.
Give me a chance to make a movie.
I don't need to make a movie. I don't need to make a movie.
Carrey was no longer following the rules and no one knew what to expect from him anymore. In fact, a conversation he had with the director in one scene was tragically comedic.
You'll start now when Andy steps in, no?
You mean me? I step in.
Yeah. Okay. You're bring Andy.
I know. You talk like I'm not even standing there.
No,
I'm
no,
a different
no.
person. Excuse me.
You know what you are playing, so.
Okay.
For Jim, reality and the role had started to blend together. Those who saw him in this state were both amazed and frightened by the unpredictable and complex personality emerging from the cheerful man everyone loved. When filming ended, the actor felt extremely unhappy and exhausted because he had to become himself again.
I'm losing control. When I put that mask on, I can do anything. Be anything.
Whatever that mask is, you don't need it.
Although Jim didn't realize it at the time, the dramatic roles he played had triggered a difficult inner process within him. Man on the Moon became the film that best summarized Carrey's massive struggle to leave behind his old identity and rediscover himself as a person. However, this journey would not be as easy as it seemed, and Carrey was dragged into a deep depression that would last for many years.
And the difference between depression and sadness is just, you know, from happenstance. Whatever happened or didn't happen for you, or, you know, grief or whatever it is. And depression is your body saying, fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore. I don't want to hold up this avatar that you've created in the world. It's too much for me.
All the characters Jim played seemed to have an eerie resemblance to his own fate. He played Stanley Ipkiss, a man who puts on a mask to deal with the problems in his life. He portrayed Truman Burbank, who lives under constant surveillance. And he brought to life the legendary comedian Andy Kaufman, who blurred the line between reality and fiction. But as he went deeper into these characters, his mind became more and more confused. At one point, Jim realized a terrifying truth. He no longer had any idea where the real Jim Carrey was.
As an actor, you play characters, and then if you go deep enough into those characters, you realize that your own character is pretty thin to begin with, you know? And then you suddenly have this separation and go, well, who's Jim Carrey? Oh, he doesn't exist, actually.
And I ultimately found that even the me I created wasn't real, so that left me in an odd, precarious situation.
The film we all know, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, was not just a role for Carrey. It was an opportunity to express the real pain inside him. While the audience saw a deep longing for a woman, in those scenes, Jim was actually fighting his own inner battle with heavy depression and loneliness.
I've often said that I wished people could realize all their dreams and wealth and fame, and so that they could see that it's not where you're going to find your sense of completion.
The filming of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a real challenge for Carrey. The working conditions were quite intense. The script was constantly changing, and the film's director, Michel Gondry, used clever techniques that played with the actors' emotions. Director Gondry often provoked the actors to capture the right emotions. For example, he gave Jim and Kate Winslet completely opposite and conflicting instructions. To create genuine confusion and anger on screen, not something artificial, he deliberately set them against each other. For Jim, this environment was quite dangerous for his mental state at the time. The filming process brought out even more of the dark mindset he was trying to escape. During a lunch, director Gondry looked at Jim and said the following.
Michel Gondry, he looked at me over lunch and he said, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful right now. You're so broken. I love this. Please don't get well." That's how fucked up this business is.
I was on Prozac for a long time, and I'm not sure. I mean, it may have helped me out of a jam for a little bit, but people stay on it forever. You know, I had to get off at a certain point because I realized that, you know, everything's just okay.
The path to recovery was long and difficult, but giving up the antidepressants he had been using was the first important step for Jim. He adopted a healthy lifestyle instead of relying on pills. He changed his diet, started taking vitamins, completely cut coffee and alcohol out of his life, and began exercising regularly. We started seeing Jim Carrey much less frequently in films and TV shows. To better understand himself and his depression, he removed everything unnecessary from his life. He channeled all his emotions and inner pain into painting. This passion truly helped him feel better.
When I really started painting a lot, I had become so obsessed that there was nowhere to move in my home. Paintings were everywhere. They were becoming a part of the furniture.
Jim began actively practicing meditation and searching for support in philosophy and religion. He wanted to understand what had been eating away at him for so long. Over time, he realized that instead of running from pain, he needed to accept it. Eventually, those heavy struggles that had followed him for years became the key to his journey of self-discovery. And he finally found the answer to this question. Who am I really, and where is my true place in this world?
I don't exist. So they're all characters that I played, including Jim Carrey, including Joel Barish, including any of those things. They're all characters. You know, Jim Carrey was a less intentional character, right? Because I thought I was just building something that people would like, but it was a character, you know, so it's, you know, I played the guy that was free from concern so that people who watched me would be free from concern.
Thanks to this awareness, despite the difficulties he had experienced in the past with the director of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, he decided to reunite with him for a new series project called Kidding. This project was almost a mirror of the life the actor once lived. A face loved by millions on screen, but behind that mask, a broken man searching for the meaning of life. But for Jim, this was now a chapter left behind. When filming began, he had already put his inner world in order and overcome his depression. That's why this role was not a repetition of his past pain, but rather a kind of farewell to it.
And, I dealt with depression, a few years ago, and people still think, well, he's going through, you can tell he's depressed. And it's not. I have no depression in my life whatsoever. Literally none. I have sadness and joy and elation and satisfaction and gratitude beyond belief, but all of it is weather, and it just spins around the planet. It doesn't sit on me long enough to kill me. Everybody walks around and they go like, why am I depressed? Well, it's because you're trying to be something for the world, and as soon as you let that go, better things happen because they're just happening.
After a long break, just as Carrey had almost completely quit acting, he made a surprising return with the role of Dr. Robotnik in Sonic. Once again, he was portraying one of those exaggerated and wild characters we all knew. But in the past, these roles were a way for Jim to escape reality or prove himself to others. Now, acting had simply become a fun game. He had found the inner peace he was searching for, and this freedom allowed him to be as absurd as before on screen, but this time without losing his true self. On set, Jim was given complete freedom. He would act almost entirely through improvisation, with barely any rehearsals, creating jokes in the moment. Jim Carrey's talent was a gift given to him. It brought him worldwide fame and fortune. But over time, that gift turned into a curse, a journey where he lost his sense of self. However, by going through all these difficult experiences, Jim Carrey was finally able to find his freedom. Not by abandoning his talent, but by refusing to be a prisoner of it.
You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying, I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it. To find real peace, you have to let the armor go. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all of your glory.
Thank you for watching the video up to this point. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. Have a great day.